I had watched 300 men bleed on the stones of the Thane ring and never once looked away, and I would tell you now that it was a fourth man's mercy that undid me, except that it was not a man at all. It was a girl on her knees in the ash with her sleeves pushed back, pressing her two small hands over a wound that would have killed the fighter inside 100 heartbeats, and it was the whole of Greywater roaring for her to leave him to die. I remember the roar because I had grown up inside it. My father ruled Dunkero from that ring, and his father before him, and every spring when the thaw came off the mountains and swelled the lake below the hold until the meltwater ran silver in the ditches, the packs sent their strongest to the Thane ring to test one another and to test me. That was the shape of my world. A man was worth what his fist and his wolf could win on the stones, and a woman was worth the blood of the man who claimed her, and the strongest of us stood at the center of the ring, and the rest of us stood around it and cheered until our throats tore. I had stood at the center longer than any king before me. I had never lost, and I had never, in 11 years of ruling, found the one thing the ring could not give me. They pressed me about it that morning before the girl, before any of it. I sat in the king's seat above the ring with the thaw wind off the lake pulling at the fur on my shoulders, and Thane Voss leaned to my ear the way he had leaned every spring for 6 years, and said the thing he always said. "Choose Kalen, the packs are watching. A king without a Luna is a crack in the ice. Give them a woman to cheer, and they'll stop wondering what's wrong with you." "Nothing is wrong with me," I said. "Then choose. Bale's sister is here. She has the blood, the bearing, the pack behind her. Half the Thanes would kneel to that match before the melt is done." Below us, 2 fighters circled on the wet stones, and the crowd's noise rose and fell with them like the lake breathing. I did not look at Bale's sister, who sat draped in white fur 3 seats down with her chin lifted, waiting to be looked at. I had looked at her before. I had looked at all of them, the daughters of Thanes, the strongest omegas of the strongest packs, women bred and dressed and presented to me across 11 springs like blades laid out for a king to test the edge. There was nothing wrong with any of them. That was the trouble. My wolf had never once, in all those years, so much as lifted its head. The old readers of my line had told me what to wait for. There is a mark, they said, that some few are born carrying, not the common mate mark that flowers on the skin when 2 wolves are bound, but an older thing, a moon mark born into the flesh, halved between 2 souls at the making of the world and scattered when the world broke. Find the half that answers yours, they said, and you will not have to choose. You will know. My father had a moon mark. He found my mother across a burning field with an arrow in his shoulder and knew her before he knew his own name, and they said the mark on his chest had burned like a coal the moment he saw her. I carried its twin, a pale scar over my heart in the shape of a broken circle, there since birth, cold as stone my whole life. 11 springs of women, and it had never so much as warmed. So I did not choose. I told Voss what I told him every spring, that I would know her when the mark knew her, and he sighed the sigh of a man watching a king throw a kingdom away for a superstition, and he sat back, and below us a fighter went down hard on the stones and did not get up. That was when I saw her. The fighter had taken a blow to the throat that should not have landed, a foul strike after the yield sign was given, and Bale, who had thrown it, stood over him with his lip curled, waiting for the man to die so the count would go to him. That was the law of the ring. A yield could be ignored. A downed man was the winner's to finish or to spare, and Bale spared no one. It was why the packs feared him and why the Thanes wanted his blood tied to mine. The crowd screamed for the finish. And out of the smoke at the ring's edge, where the fire tenders kept the braziers burning against the thaw cold, a girl in a gray shift crossed the forbidden stones at a dead run, and dropped to her knees in the ash beside the dying man, and put her hands on his throat, as if the whole roaring pack of us were not there at all. The ring went strange for a moment. It is against every law of the games for anyone but a fighter to cross into the ring during a bout. She had no rank, no wolf that anyone knew of, no name that anyone called. She was one of the drowned folk who tended the fires for a bowl of food and a place by the coals, the leavings of some flooded valley in the west whose people had scattered when their homes went under the water years past. She was nothing. And she knelt in the ash with a killer standing over her and pressed her hands to a stranger's torn throat, and I saw her lips moving, and I could not hear over the crowd what she said to him, but I saw the dying man's eyes find her face and hold there, and I saw him stop struggling to breathe and simply breathe. "Get her out," Voss said, disgusted. "She's fouled the bout. Bales owed the count." Bale thought so too. He reached down and took the girl by the collar of her shift and hauled her up off the man, and she came up light as a bundle of reeds, and she did not fight him. She only twisted in his grip to keep her hands on the wound as long as she could, and when he tore her loose she cried out, not for herself, but, "He'll bleed, let me hold it, he'll bleed." "Then let him bleed," Bale said, and threw her down onto the stones outside the ring line, and the crowd laughed. I have thought since about why I stood. I was the king. Fire tenders were beneath my notice. A fouled bout was a matter for the ringmaster, not for me. There were 1,000 reasons a king does not rise from his seat over a drowned girl in the ash. But I was on my feet with my hand raised before I had decided anything, and the ring fell silent the way it always did when I stood, 3,000 throats going quiet at once, and into that silence I said, "Hold the count." Bale turned, "My lord, the yield." "The yield was given and you struck past it," I said. "The bout is void. Tend your man," I told the ringmaster, "or let her." And every eye in Greywater turned to the girl on the stones. She got up slowly. She was younger than I'd thought from above, perhaps 22, thin the way the drowned folk were all thin, with dark hair coming loose from its binding and a smear of another man's blood across her cheek, and when she lifted her face to the king's seat to see who had spoken for her, I felt nothing. I want to be honest about that because of everything that came after. I felt nothing but a king's cold interest in a strange thing. My Mark did not stir. My wolf did not wake. She was, in that moment, only a brave fool in the ash, and I had spared her the way I might spare a hound that had run into a fight, because it had done a thing that surprised me, and I did not yet know why. "Let her tend him," I said again, and sat down, and the ringmaster waved her back, and she went to the fallen fighter and knelt and put her hands to his throat, and the bout after that began, and I forgot her. I did not forget her for long. The games ran 3 days at the spring thaw, and the king watched all of them. And by custom the king took his evening meal in the low hall of Greywater among the thanes and the champions, where the ale ran and the talk was all of the day's bouts and the next day's matches. That first night the talk was of the ash girl, told as a joke, Bale telling it loudest, how the drowned wretch had thrown herself over a dying man like a mother over a pup, how she'd have died herself if the king hadn't taken pity, how the drowned folk were all soft in the head from too much water. The hall laughed. Bale's sister laughed loudest of all, the white fur at her throat trembling with it, and looked to me to laugh with her. I did not laugh. I asked instead of old Kjol, who had been ringmaster at Greywater since before I was born and knew every soul that had ever passed through the hold, "The girl, does she have a name?" Kjol was quiet a moment. He was a scarred old wolf with one milk-white eye, and he had a way of going still before he said a true thing, as if he were listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. "Aveline," he said at last. "She's tended my fires 2 winters, come up from the drowned lands with nothing but the shift on her back and a burn scar on her throat, and she's not spoken 10 words about herself in all that time. But I'll tell you a thing, my lord, that I've told no one." He leaned in, and his milk-white eye caught the fire. "In 2 winters I've seen that girl put her hands on every kind of hurt the ring can make. Broke bones, torn wolves, men gone mad with the blood rage so their own kin couldn't come near them. And I've never once seen a hurt thing raise a hand against her. Not once. The wildest wolf we ever dragged off these stones, the kind we have to put down before it takes a throat, I saw her walk up to it in the pen and it laid its head in her lap and slept." He sat back. "You asked me does she have a name. She's got more than that, but she'll thank you not to say I said so." I did not sleep well that night. The mark over my heart, which had been cold my whole life, was not warm. I would not lie to you and say it burned, not yet, but it was not still either. It was the way a struck bell is not silent even after the sound has faded, a faint low trembling underneath the ribs, a note held somewhere too deep to hear. I lay in the king's chamber above the thaw-out lake and listened to the meltwater running in the ditches all night, and I told myself it was the ale. The second day of the games, I watched the fires more than the ring. She was easy to find once you knew to look for her. She moved along the braziers at the ring's edge, keeping the coals fed against the thaw cold, and when a fighter went down, she was there before the ringmaster's men, kneeling in the ash with her sleeves shoved back and her hands already working, and I began to see that Knelt had told me the truth and less than the truth. It was not only that hurt things did not turn on her, it was that they gentled. I watched a warrior come off the stones with his arm hanging wrong and his wolf half risen in his eyes, blood-mad and dangerous, the kind of man his own packmates gave a wide berth to until the rage burned down, and she took his ruined arm in her two hands and set her forehead against his shoulder and said something, and I watched the wolf go out of his eyes like a lamp turned down, and he let her set the bone and did not so much as growl. And when it was done, he looked at her the way the dying man had looked at her the day before, as if she had reached into him and taken hold of something no one had ever touched, and he did not know what to say to her, so he said nothing, and she was already gone to the next fire. "She's wasted on the coals," I said to Knelt, watching. "She's safe on the coals," Knelt said. "My lord, forgive an old man, but leave her be. The last time someone in this hold decided that girl was too fine for the fires, it was Baal, 2 winters gone, thinking he'd make a pet of her. She wouldn't have it. He doesn't forgive being refused, that one. If the king takes an interest in her, Baal will make her pay for it in the only coin he has, and she's the one who'll bleed, not you." He looked at me with his one good eye. "You spared her yesterday. It was kind. Kind's a thing that lands on the kind one's head in this ring. Let her be small and let her be safe." It was good counsel. I did not take it. That evening, I did a thing a king should not have to do, which was to go quietly, without my thanes, down to the low sheds by the lake where the fire tenders and the drovers and the drowned folk slept among the pens. The thaw had swollen the lake up to the very doors, and the whole world down there smelled of meltwater and wet stone and wolf, and I came around the end of a pen, and found her sitting on an upturned trough with a lamp beside her, winding a strip of cloth she'd boiled clean, alone. She rose the instant she saw me and went to one knee in the mud, because I was the king, and I said, "Get up, please." She got up. She kept her eyes down. There was still a faint smear of ash at her temple, and under her jaw, half hidden by the loose collar of her shift, I could see the edge of the burn scar Knelt had spoken of, old, silvered, curved. She did not look at me, and I found I could not stop looking at her, and I did not know why, and it made me speak too plainly. "They tell me hurt things don't turn on you," I said. "Some do, my lord," she said to the ground. "The ones too far gone, mostly they're only frightened. A frightened thing bites because it thinks it has to." A pause. "It usually finds out it doesn't. And the man yesterday, in the ring. You crossed the line for a stranger with a killer standing over you. You could have died." She was quiet a moment. When she spoke, it was so low I had to lean to hear it over the meltwater. "He was going to die alone in the ash with 3,000 people screaming for it," she said. "I've seen a valley of people die. I couldn't help any of them. The water was faster than I was. But I could put my hands on that one man so he didn't go out of the world untouched." She lifted her eyes then, only for a moment, and they were dark and steady and not at all afraid of me. "The count didn't matter to me, my lord. I'm sorry if I fouled your games, but I'd do it again." And there, I will not pretend it was more than it was, there was the first flicker of it, not the bell tolling. A single low note, one strike, come and gone, deep in the cold mark over my heart, so faint I could have told myself I dreamed it. My wolf, which had slept through 11 springs of the finest women in the north, lifted its head half an inch in the dark of me and went still, listening. I did not understand it. I was a warrior king in a world that measured every soul by what it could take, and this drowned girl on an upturned trough had just told me, without fear and without pride, that she measured the world by what could be spared, and something in me that had been cold my whole life had answered her. I did not know yet that I was hearing the far edge of a bell that had been rung before either of us was born. I only knew I did not want to leave the wet sheds by the lake, and that this was not a thing a king could say, and so I said instead, foolishly, "The scar on your throat, how did you come by it?" Her hand went up to it, an old habit I would learn, a shielding, and for the first time she went guarded. "Fire," she said, "when I was small. Before the water." And she pulled her collar closed over it, and I knew I'd overstepped, and I let it go. "Sleep well, Aveline," I said, and I saw her startle a little that I knew her name, and I left her there by the lamp with the thaw running at the door, and I went back up to the hold and did not sleep at all. The old moon reader kept a cell in the oldest part of Greywater, up under the eaves where the hold's first stones were laid, and I went to her before dawn on the third day of the games, because I could not carry the thing alone any longer. Anna was older than Kjol, older than anyone, blind these 30 years, and she had read the moon marks of my father and my father's father, and when I came in she turned her white eyes toward me as if she'd been waiting. "You felt it," she said before I spoke. "After 11 springs, the marks woken." "A note," I said, "once barely." "Then she's near, but not near enough, or the half of it in her sleeps." Anna reached out with her old hands, and I let her lay them flat on my chest over the broken circle scar, the way she had when I was a boy, and she went very still. "Ah," she breathed. "Warm. It's warm, Kaelin. 11 springs I've laid my hand here, and it was cold as the lake, and now it's warm as bread." She drew back. "Who is she?" "A fire tender, one of the drowned folk, out of a flooded valley in the west." Anna went so still that for a moment I thought she'd stopped breathing. "Say the name of the valley," she said. "I don't know it, she won't speak of it. She came up 2 winters ago with a burn scar on her throat and nothing else." "A burn scar," Anna said, "on the throat, in the shape of a broken circle, Kaelin, curved, silvered." The bell tolled. Not a note now, the whole bell, one long low peal that rang up out of the cold place over my heart and went on ringing, and I understood all at once, standing in the old woman's cell in the gray before dawn, what I had seen at the edge of the girl's collar and refused to understand. Not a burn, never a burn. The moon mark, born into her throat, the sundered twin of the broken circle over my heart, hidden 2 winters under a lie because a drowned girl alone in a warrior's world had learned to hide the one thing about herself that might be wanted. "The Aaron," Anna whispered, and her blind face turned toward the window and the drowning valley of the west as if she could see it. "The old moon line of the drowned lands. They said it was lost when the valley went under, the whole line, drowned, the last of the old marks gone out of the world. Kaelin." Her hand found my wrist and gripped it hard. "The other half of your mark did not sleep in some Thane's daughter these 11 springs. It was under the water. It survived. It's been carrying your fires 2 winters and hiding its own throat, and it does not know, do you hear me, she cannot know what she is, or she would never have let herself be thrown down in the ash. Go carefully. A moon mark hidden that long, in a soul that's learned to make itself small to stay alive, it will not wake easy, and it will not wake to a command. It only ever wakes to the truest thing the soul can do." She turned her white eyes up at me. "What is the truest thing that girl does, Kaelin?" I thought of her in the ash with her hands on a dying stranger's throat, 3,000 people screaming for him to die. "Mercy," I said. "Then pray you're near," the old woman said, "the day her mercy costs her everything. Because that is the day it will wake, and it will wake in front of the whole ring, and the whole ring will see what the drowned girl truly is. Pray you're the king she wakes beside, and not the crowd that scorned her." I went down to the games that third morning meaning to go to her, meaning to take her hand in front of Greywater and end 11 springs of Voss's sighing right there, and the day would not let me. That is how these things go. The final bouts of the games are the fiercest, the champions' bouts, the ones the packs cross the thawing passes to see, and the ringmaster had matched Bale against a young challenger out of the northern packs named Hesk, big, raw, faster than his size, and hungry to make his name on the champion's ruin. I sat in the king's seat with my heart full of a drowned girl, and my mark warm at last, and I watched Bale take that young fighter apart, and I felt the day turn under me toward the thing Enna had prayed I'd be near for. Bale did not fight to win. He fought to break. He let the young one land his blows, took them grinning, wore him down and turned him, and when Hesk was spent and reeling, Bale did not take the count. He worked him. He drew it out for the crowd, opening the young man up strike by strike, and I saw the moment it happened. I had seen it before in the ring, the thing the games sometimes make of a man. I saw Hesk go past the pain into that red place where the wolf takes the reins and the man is drowned under it. His yield never came because there was no longer a man in him to give it. His shape broke and shivered and ran, and where the beaten young fighter had stood there was a war wolf, huge and raw and utterly lost, mad with pain and rage. Its own name burned out of it, and it did not turn on Bale. It turned on the crowd. There is a reason we call it the mad wolf, and a reason the ringmaster keeps men with long spears at the wall. A wolf lost to the blood rage is not a wolf. It is grief and pain with teeth, and it does not know friend from foe, kin from crowd. It knows only that everything hurts and everything near must be made to stop. Hesk's wolf broke for the ring wall where it was lowest, where the common folk and the fire tenders pressed close to see, and the wall would not hold it, and I was on my feet with my sword half drawn and the spearmen scrambling and 3,000 people turning in one instant from screaming for blood to screaming in terror. And in the front of that crowd, where the braziers burned, an old drover had fallen trying to run and could not get up, and the mad wolf was on the man in a bound. And there was no spear near enough, and no fighter near enough, and I was too far, I would not reach him. And Aveline stepped over the wall into the ring. She did not run. I have gone over it 1,000 times since, and that is the thing I cannot forget. She did not run at the wolf, and she did not run away. She stepped over the low place in the wall slow and steady with her empty hands out from her sides, and she put herself between the mad wolf and the fallen old man, and she stood there, small and unarmed, in the path of a thing that had just decided the whole world had to be made to stop. The ring went silent, even the terror stopped. 3,000 people watched a drowned girl stand in front of the mad wolf with nothing in her hands, and I stood in the king's seat with my sword drawn and could not so much as breathe, because I knew, Enna had told me not 2 hours gone, I knew what this was, and I knew if I was wrong she would die in the next heartbeat, and I would have watched it. The wolf swung its ruined head toward her and gathered to spring. "I know," she said. That was all. Her voice was not loud. It carried in that silence the way a small sound carries over water. She did not command it, and she did not beg it. She spoke to it the way she'd spoken to the dying man in the ash, the way she'd spoken to the warrior with the ruined arm, low and steady and without any fear at all, and what she said to the thing that was about to kill her was, I know it hurts. I know they made you into this and you didn't want to be it. I know." She took one slow step toward it, her hands open. "You don't have to be it anymore. Nobody's going to hurt you again. I've got you." And I saw the mark wake. It started at her throat, a light, pale and cold and clean as the first light off the thaw lake, welling up out of the old silvered scar she'd hidden 2 winters, spreading in the shape of a broken circle across the skin of her throat, and up her jaw and down beneath her collar, brightening until the whole ring was lit with it, until the drowned girl in the gray shift stood in the center of the Thane ring, wearing the oldest light in the world. And the moment it woke in her throat, the twin of it woke in my chest, and the bell that had been ringing low and far all night rang out full and near and enormous, one great peal that went up through the whole of me, and my wolf, silent 11 springs, rose in me and threw back its head and knew her, the other half of the world, come up out of the drowned lands with my fires on her hands, and I heard myself make a sound I had never made in my life. The mad wolf stopped. It stood over the fallen man with its ruined head lowered, and the light of her throat shining in its eyes, and I watched the red place go out of it the way I'd watched it go out of the warrior with the ruined arm, watched the grief and the pain drain out and leave only a hurt young man's wolf shivering in the ash. And then, in front of 3,000 people, in the center of the ring where no beaten thing had ever knelt, the mad wolf folded its great forelegs and laid its ruined head down in the ash at the drowned girl's feet, and knelt to her, and was still. She sank down beside it with her marked throat shining and put her 2 small hands on its trembling shoulder, and she bowed her own head over it, and I heard her say, "There, you're all right. You're all right now." I do not remember crossing the ring. They tell me I came over the wall of the king's seat and down the tiers like a man half-mad myself, that I was in the ring before the spearmen, that Voss called after me and I did not hear him. I remember only that I was suddenly there, in the center of the Thane ring, and she looked up at me from beside the kneeling wolf with the broken circle blazing on her throat, and I saw her understand. I saw her look at the light she was throwing and put her hand up to her throat the way she always did to hide it and find it too bright now to hide, and I saw 2 winters of a lie come apart in her face, and fear come up in her at last, the fear the wolf had never gotten from her, the fear of being seen. And I pulled the broad fur cloak from my own shoulders, and I knelt down in the ash in front of her, in front of Greywater, in front of Baal and the Thanes and Baal's sister in her white fur, and I laid the king's cloak around the drowned girl's shoulders, and I said, so the whole ring could hear it, "I have you." Her hands were shaking. "My lord, I don't know what's happening to me." "I do," I said. I opened the collar of my own shirt so she could see the broken circle over my heart, cold my whole life, warm now and lit now, the twin of the light on her throat answering it across the little space between us. "It's mine," I told her. "The mark, it's the other half of yours. It's been cold 11 years, Aveline, and it woke the night I heard you say you'd cross the ring for a dying stranger and do it again. You're not a fire tender, you never were. You're the last of the Erin, the old moonline out of the drowned lands, and the mark you've hidden 2 winters is the half of a bond older than this hold, older than my father's father, sundered at the making of the world, and it just found me." My voice broke, and I did not care that the whole ring heard it break. "I've been waiting for you my whole life, and you were carrying my fires the whole time, and I let them throw you down in the ash. Forgive me. Say you'll forgive me." She looked at the mark over my heart. She looked at the light on her own throat. She looked at the mad wolf kneeling quiet at her side, and at the old drover safe behind her, and at the king of Dunkero on his knees in the ash before her with his cloak around her shoulders, and I watched the truth of it reach her all at once, and her eyes filled. "I didn't hide it because I was ashamed," she whispered. "I hid it because everyone who ever knew what it was is under the water. It was the last of them. It was all I had left of my whole valley. I couldn't let this ring make it into a thing to be won." A tear ran down through the ash on her cheek. "I never once thought it might be a thing that was already loved." "It is," I said. "You are, before I knew what you were. When you were only a girl in the ash who wouldn't let a stranger die alone." I took her cold hands in mine, over the king's cloak, and the broken circles blazed brighter where our skin met, and the whole ring gasped as one. "Aveline of the Erin, I am Kaelin, and I have never in my life had to choose, because a king with a moon mark doesn't choose, he waits and he knows. And I know you. Stand beside me, not because the ring will have it or the Thanes or the Packs. Because you are the other half of me and always were. Stand beside me and be my Luna, and I will spend the whole of my reign making a world where a girl who won't strike a dying man is the strongest soul in it." She was weeping now, and so, I think, was I, and the ring was utterly silent, 3,000 souls holding one breath, and it was old Kjol, ringmaster 40 years, scarred and half-blind, who broke it. He came down off the wall and crossed the stones and went to one knee in the ash beside the kneeling wolf, before the drowned girl in the king's cloak, and bowed his grey head, and behind him his spearmen knelt, and behind them the fire-tenders and the drovers and the drowned folk who had shared their coals with her, and then the common packs on the low tiers, row on row of them going down like grain before wind. And then, last and slowest and stiff with a fury he did not dare speak, Baal himself. Because a champion who does not kneel when the whole ring kneels is a champion the ring will tear apart, and his sister in her white fur beside him, her chin no longer lifted, kneeling to the drowned girl she had laughed at 3 nights running in the hall. I did not make them kneel. I want that understood. She had no need of their bowing, and neither did I, but I will not pretend I did not watch it, and I will not pretend it did not answer, somewhere in me, the memory of a killer throwing her down in the ash and 3,000 people laughing. "Get up," Aveline said to them in the end, and it was the first thing my Luna ever commanded, and it was mercy, of course it was mercy. "All of you get up, I can't bear it." She looked at Baal last and longest, the man who had thrown her down, and there was no triumph in her face, only a tiredness that broke my heart. "You spent yesterday teaching me what you thought I was worth," she told him. "You don't have to kneel to teach me I was worth more. Just don't do to the next one what you did to him." She nodded down at the kneeling wolf, at the young fighter he'd broken into a monster for the crowd. "That's the whole of what I'll ask of you, ever. Now get up." He got up. They all got up. And I rose from the ash and drew her up beside me with my cloak around her, and the mad wolf rising quiet at her side to follow her like a hound. And I turned her to face the ring she had crossed into unarmed, and I lifted our joined hands with the 2 broken circles blazing whole between them, and Greywater roared. But it was a different roar than the one I had grown up inside. I had heard that ring scream 300 times for a man to die. That was the first time in my life I ever heard it cry out for something to live. We did not marry in the ring. She would not have it, and neither in the end would I. The ring had taken enough from her, and I would not let it be the place that gave her to me too. We were bound instead a month later, when the thaw had run its course and the first true green had come down off the mountains, and the lake had settled back into its banks. On the western shore, where you could see, far off across the water, the drowned country she had come from, the old roofs and the old walls of Erin standing under the clear shallow melt, a whole valley of the dead lying quiet beneath the surface. She asked to be bound there in sight of them, so that the last of her line could be married where all the rest of it could see. And I stood with her at the water's edge with the whole of Dunkero behind us, and old Enna laid her blind hands on the 2 of us, and named the bond that had been sundered at the making of the world made whole again at last. And the mad wolf Hesk, whom Aveline had taken as her own, and gentled back most of the way to a man, lay in the grass at her feet the whole time, and never once left her side. I am an old king now, or old enough, and my Luna's dark hair has silver in it, and the broken circles on our skin have long since settled from that first blazing light into a warm and steady glow that never fully goes out, so that on cold nights I can find her in the dark by the light of her own throat. The Thane ring still runs at the spring thaw, because the packs will always be the packs, and a king cannot unmake the whole shape of a world in one reign. But there is a law in it now that was not there before, Aveline's law, that no yield may be struck past and no beaten thing finished. And there is a woman at every games who walks the ring's edge in a grey shift by choice and kneels in the ash beside the fallen with her hands already working. The last of the Erin, the Luna of Dunkero, who could sit in the king's seat in fur and gold, and instead goes down among the coals every spring because, she says, that is where she is most herself. And because the truest thing a soul can do is the thing that woke her. People ask me sometimes, the young Thanes, the ones too new to have been there, how the king of Dunkero came to marry a drowned fire-tender with no name and no pack. They expect a story of a duel, I think, or a bride price, or about one and a woman claimed, because that is the only shape of story this ring has ever taught them. I tell them the truth. I tell them that 11 springs of the strongest women in the north were laid before me like blades, and my mark stayed cold as the lake through every one of them. And then a girl who would not strike a dying man crossed the ring unarmed and knelt to a monster and gentled it. And the coldest thing in me woke and rang like a bell rung underwater, and never once stopped ringing since. And they always ask the same thing after, the young ones frowning, because it does not fit the world they were raised in. But my lord, they say, she never even fought. No, I tell them, and I look for her out the window down at the ring where she'll be kneeling in the ash beside some fallen fighter with the old light warm at her throat, the strongest soul in Dunkero, who has never once in her life raised her hand against a living thing. No, she never had to. That was the whole of it. That was everything I'd been waiting for, and I nearly let them throw it down in the ash. Learn from your king, and don't you make his mistake. The day you find the one who's stronger than the ring, the one whose strength is that they won't use it, you kneel. You put your cloak around them, and you kneel, and you thank the moon you were near the day it woke.